Happy Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here with all of you this afternoon. My name is Lang Hootapole. I am the founder and co-director, along with Gabby right there, for Exceptional Education Outreach. We run a program for children who learn differently within the Family Island schools. And we're really excited to have one of our oldest board members, not by age, but by longevity of being on the board with us today. This is Karla Cosgriff, and she's going to explain who she is, but I'm just very grateful to have this knowledge shared because Karla has a wealth of information and in a way that's engaging and fun. So those of you who are here, I'm glad you're here, and I look forward to learning with you today, Karla.
Great. Thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. So let me get my slideshow. Everybody can see my screen? I hope. Yes, good. All right. So welcome. Happy almost summer. Here's a little bit about me. As Lang said, my name is Karla Cosgriff. I actually grew up in Governor's Harbor. You can see there on the left. And I started teaching with EEO in 2000 in Gregorytown, and that was the first class that I had. And I've lost touch with most all of these kids that are in these pictures, but so if anybody knows them, I would love to be reconnected. I have two kids. They're twins, very different. One is a surfer and a lacrosse player. One is loves horseback riding and field hockey, and I'm also a coach of a high school girls volleyball team. So I have a lot of personal experience from my family and coaching life. And then I was also working at the largest organization for children's online safety for a number of years. So have a lot of experience dealing with this in the United States and internationally. And I think this is a really, really stressful topic for parents. And so these are some of the things that we typically hear. I'll give you a second just to read, and maybe you will agree that you've heard some of these things in your own life when you're dealing with kids and talking about technology. We tend to hear lots of excuses and complaints from our kids. Anybody can share anything else that they've heard from their kids. I'm happy to address that, and happy to address anything as you go along if you want to put it in the chat too. So these are some of the things we hear, and these are some of the things that we experience. It's pretty frustrating dealing with our kids in this, because we have our own set of rules, and our next door neighbor or our parents or our brothers and sisters who have kids might have different rules. And so this is a really challenging thing to deal with in our life. And we can't avoid it, right? So today I'm going to talk a little bit about technology in general, giving us some context. I'm going to do some self-reflection, just talk about research, and then some hot topics and actions that you can take. And then we'll do a quick Q&A. And I'm happy to stay longer than an hour if any of you have specific questions. And what I'm going to try to do today is talk sort of down the middle, like for around fourth to eighth graders. I know some of you have younger kids and some of you have older kids, and I saw the questions that came through beforehand. So a lot of these things can be applied to a wide range of kids, and also a range of types of learners too. So I'm very aware, excuse me, that the EEO program deals with a lot of neurodivergent kids. And so I want to be mindful of that too. Okay, so let's reflect a little bit on why this is so hard for us as parents. Many of us grew up playing cards. Some of us got Cracker Jack boxes that had toys in them that we could play with for hours and hours. This was our phone, if we even had one. And then we had Walkmans, we rode our bikes, we went fishing. Life was just much simpler when many of us grew up. And so this is a different time in our life when we're dealing with so much technology all around us. And before, we also had to go somewhere where we wanted to gamble, right? We had to go to a casino. It was a physical building. And then if we wanted to see racy photos of something, or if people in our family did, they went and bought magazines. But now all of that stuff is in our pocket in a little device. And so it's very, very hard to navigate, because we don't have the separation that we used to have. So I just want to take you through. This is a slide that I used to use in my previous job about how far we've come in about 20 years with technology. And it's no wonder that our heads are spinning and we can't keep up. So up until like the late 90s, all we were worried about was movies, TV shows, books. Are they appropriate for our kids? Like, are they going to see swearing or hear swearing or see sex on TV or any other kind of bad things that we didn't want them to see? And then in the late 90s, we had the tech boom. And this is when AOL came around. This is when people started having the ability to go on really rudimentary websites. And in the United States, we passed a law about the internet called Section 230. And this was in 1996. And I realize I'm talking about a US law, which doesn't really impact things here in the Bahamas, but I think it's just an important marker for everything that I'm going to say next. So then, of course, we had smartphones come onto the scene. Then we had social media. Then we had the dawn of YouTube and TikTok and short form video. And now we have AI, right? And so all of those things that you can see on the screen under each of those categories are all the things that are really problematic with that evolution in technology. And here we are still in 2026 dealing with the onset, really, it's an onslaught of AI. And our internet laws in the United States, where most of this technology generates from, still haven't changed in 30 years. So there's no way that we are able to protect kids and that we are not able to keep up with how much technology is evolving all the time. So I just want to have you keep that in the back of your head so you know that this is not hard and nobody is out there, especially laws and the big tech companies, trying to make this easier for you. Your head is spinning just like everybody else's in trying to manage this, and it is absolutely not easy. Sorry, I can't seem to. There we go. So let's take a moment and if you have your device that you use, your phone, or if you have an iPad or something, I would love for you to just go to your screen time on your device and see how much screen time that you use that you might have used yesterday or last week. I'm happy to share mine right here. This is embarrassing. But I had last week a daily average of 6.5 hours, right? Which is pretty shocking given what I'm going to show you on the next slides. But I do have to say, I'm not going to beat myself up because all screen time is not the same. And I have an iPhone and it tracks when I listen to the news or if I'm listening to music, if I go for a run, or if I am watching a video on YouTube because I need to fix my dishwasher, right? So it tracks all of these different things that can be very helpful and that are important in my life, not just the stuff that we shouldn't be constantly looking at, like social media. So I encourage you to reflect on this, but not to beat yourself up because not all screen time is equal. But here's an idea, oops, of how this works out, how this calculates in your life. So for me, I was spending about 6 hours, right? But on that last slide, let's just break it down to 5 hours on this slide, that is approximately 30% of my waking time that I'm looking down at a device. Again, I don't think I was looking down the whole time. I think I was listening to music and I was running and I was listening to my book on tape. But essentially, this is just a good calculation for you to get a baseline of how much screen time is in our daily lives. And then another thing, this is an interesting graphic to show kids who you feel like are spending a lot of time online. This is showing like all the time that we have left in the world after we do all of our chores. We sleep, we go to school, we cook and we eat, and we use the bathroom and do our chores. We will have about 334 months, assuming that we live to 90 years old from the age of 18. And kids right now are on track to spend most of that free time on a screen or using a device. So that's a lot different than the way we grew up. So again, it's really hard to understand this new world. And this diagram also gives us a reason that we should be paying attention to this and having more conversations about it. So I just want to give you some quick background and research just about how, and this is all US based. I couldn't find a lot of data for the Bahamas. But I don't think it's that different because I come here a lot and I see the difference and I've run a camp over the past couple of years, and I see the different kind of activities that kids are doing here as opposed to 10 and 20 years ago. About 50% of kids now have their own iPad or iPad-like device by the age of 4 in the United States. And then that, of course, uh, gets higher the older they get. And then you can see 42% of kids have their own phone, so their own internet device, own internet connected device when they're 10, and then 91% of kids have a device by the time they're 14, which is really, really high, right? And then the next little piece of information down there is showing how much these devices are disrupting the school day. So about a quarter of time that kids are on their devices, they're actually doing that at school. This is why you see a lot of places, a lot of countries, a lot of states in the United States also banning cell phones at school because it is interrupting studying and learning and obviously then cognitive development. Um, there was a really interesting study that just came out that kids feel the need to go onto their devices and onto social media because they really use it to connect with each other. But at the same time that they're using it to connect with each other and to be social, they're also getting bullied and harassed on those devices. So it's both ends of the spectrum. They love it and they hate it. And so we'll get a little bit more into this afterwards. I also want to talk just really briefly about AI. And I'm not going to get into ChatGPT and to Claude and all these other kinds of GPTs that are helping a lot of people be more efficient with their work and maybe to write better and to learn new things. I want to specifically talk about AI social companions, which we know kids are really experimenting with. And so these social companions are different than your regular GPT, where you put in a question like, why is the sky blue? And it gives you an answer. These are things like, I'm not feeling well today. Can you tell me why I'm feeling sad? And they develop relationships with you and have really um, good instinct to have friend connections. But we know that it's still a computer, right? At least adults know. Sometimes the kids know it too, but not likely. So there's a lot of these social companions out there, and they're often in the App Store for kids as young as 8 years old. And so kids are downloading them and they're talking to these social companions as if instead of their friends. And we also know from the research that they're also asking them really intimate questions about puberty, about sexuality, about the way they should handle friendships in ways that they used to ask adults in previous times. So it gets really, really scary. Sorry, for some reason I can't click forward. There we go. So one of the things that's happening too is that these AI chatbots are being put into toys for young kids, as well as really interesting devices and exciting devices for older kids. So some of you might recognize these plush toys on the left. There's been a number of studies done with these toys where, the blue thing is called Amico, and you can ask it, oh, I love to jump. Oh, where do you like to jump? Oh, I'm jumping off my couch. Where else can I jump? Oh, you can try jumping out a window. That's obviously not very good for a kid, right? There's not a lot of safety regulations and any guardrails around them. And then for older kids, there's something called a friend device that you literally wear around your neck and you talk to it as if you were carrying around a friend all the time. So this is something that kids are doing regularly, but you don't have to buy these devices to be part of this. I experimented with the friend device, and I asked the friend who is called Bellamy how I could sneak out of my house and go to a party. I pretended I was a young person, a teenager, and that my parents were not letting me go to a party, and I wanted to sneak out. And this thing basically helped me plan how I would not get caught. So just be really aware that there's these things out there that should not be used by kids under 18, but are being highly experimented with and do not have any safety standards for which we can keep kids just in their childhood and being really safe. But the good news is there's other research that has shown that kids are skeptical of AI, especially when might be using it for learning. They realize that it doesn't always tell them the truth. They don't trust it. They realize that it hallucinates. So it's good that kids are asking these questions, but the younger they are, they won't be able to even ask those questions because they haven't matured enough to understand why something might mislead them or lie to them. So one of the things that we talk about a lot with technology is that it's so, so dangerous, right? And there are definitely kids who have been victims of what we call child sexualized abuse material, right? There are kids who have been led to suicide because they have been talking to a chatbot. There are lots of kids who have been coaxed into body dysmorphia and to having eating disorders, right? So a lot of these really, really bad things are happening. So a lot of the time we talk about how do we protect kids from the digital world, from all of these horrible things that are happening. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the right question we should be asking. We need to reframe it from that question to something about how we help kids thrive in the digital world, because the digital world is our world, right? It is not going away. So, how can we have more time being kids, and how can we have spend more time asking questions about how do we use technology to be pro-human? How can we be more pro-joy in our life, pro-play, pro-attention, pro-imagination? I don't want us to be completely anti-tech, right? Because tech can be really great. Right? There's an entire free learning system at Khan Academy. We can FaceTime our friends. We can watch sporting events. We can learn about the world through Google Earth. We can actually go to the pyramids in Egypt whenever we want to. We can learn a new language. We can learn how to speak English better, right? We can learn to knit. We can fix our dishwasher, as I said before. So tech can be really, really great. But what we need are some guardrails and some guidance, right? And we really need to understand, like with anything in life, we need to have a good tech diet. Just like we need to eat fruits and vegetables, we should be getting some exercise. We shouldn't be eating all the cookies in the container, right? We also need to think about tech that way. We need to treat it as part of our overall health, and we need to strive for good digital wellness. So one of the ways that we can start doing this with our kids, especially, is to follow the 5 C's from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And that is that we all have different kids, right? I have twins, and I'm shocked that they're not. Obviously, they're one's a boy and one's a girl, so that's different. But they were raised in the same house. We do all the same things up until a certain age, but they're so, so different, right? So we have to know um, who our kids are, what they enjoy, what's going to trigger them to maybe go down a rabbit hole online, or what's going to make them happy and learn, right? We really have to understand what kind of content that they're seeing online and how it's making them feel. Somebody asked this question in the submission before this talk about technology, using technology for regulation, and how hard it is to use to get kids to calm down when you take away technology. These are important things that we have to recognize about our kids. Like, are we using technology to regulate emotions? For example, a lot of people will say if a kid is having a tantrum, oh, just take the iPad for 10 minutes to calm down. But can we teach them other coping mechanisms, right? Should we be looking at our screens before we go to bed? We know that the research says no, but there's a lot of kids out there who look at their iPads for an hour before they go to bed to calm down. So thinking about how else can we teach self-regulation? And then tech and other media use, is it crowding out being just a regular kid who should be playing, who should be developing friendships, who should be learning about the world around them, and who should be achieving well in school? Like, we want to make sure that all of those things are happening. And that tech is not getting in the way. But the one caveat that, again, there are some neurodivergent learners, right, who really need tech to help them with socialization. It might be that is one of the ways that they can really connect with people who also might have the same challenges that they do. And then the really important thing here is we have to talk to our kids about what they're seeing online, right? Do they understand what they're seeing in a YouTube video? Do they understand what they're seeing in a TV show? And how does that all change as they get older? One of the things that I really like to do with my own kids is share when I make a mistake online, right? And I love to tell the story about how when the internet first came about and I was able to use it. This is in I think in 1999, and I wanted to look up something to do with the White House. And instead of putting in whitehouse.gov, I put in whitehouse.com. And at the time, people were even, weirdos back then. They made whitehouse.com a pornography site. So that was a big mistake that I made. And obviously, my employer saw that I went to that site and I had to own up to it. And I had to say it was a complete mistake. I'm working on this project. But I think when we share our mistakes with our kids and we share when we've seen things that make us upset, right? There's a lot of images of war right now, there's a lot of images of aggression. Um, Talking to your kids about it just helps them realize that they have an ally in you and that you can be there and hold their hand through all this learning. So we also have to talk to our kids about why we want to be on technology so much, not just them, but us too, right? Design is a huge issue. We are the products, right? These platforms, this technology is all designed to be addictive, right? We get pop-ups that are in red. We get notifications all the time. There's emojis everywhere. There are some apps that congratulate you on how many streaks you've had, right? Like Snapchat and Duolingo, and they entice you to come back. I'll share my phone later, and you can see some of the notifications on my phone that are pretty shocking. But it's all designed to be addictive, right? It's all designed to keep us coming back because we are the product. Every time we go on one of these pieces of tech, somebody somewhere is making money. So it's really our attention that we're giving away to people, and we're getting these dopamine hits, right? Every time we see something. The other thing to understand, and I'm not going to show this video right here, but it's a really great video to watch with your kids. It's about 7 minutes long. It's understanding algorithms and how all of us are being manipulated by what's online, right? So, for example, my son loves to surf. But when you watch surfing videos over and over, which I don't mind that he does because he's really interested in perfecting like his turns and everything, but you can watch a certain number of surfing videos and then all of a sudden you are getting a lot of videos fed to you about partying on a beach. And then there's girls in bikinis, and then girls in bikinis quickly go to pornography, right? So it's really important to understand how quickly these algorithms feed additional information that may not be what your original intention was. And so understanding how we're manipulated, and we know kids hate to be manipulated, right? If they can understand that, it's a really, really good first step. So essentially, we have to manage tech in all parts of our kids' lives, right? There's the individual management, there's how we're going to manage it as a family. There might be tech in schools, and then there's a lot of policy that needs to happen. I'm not really going to pay attention to the tech in schools and the policy piece right now. I just want to focus on us as individuals and families. And so a lot of time, and we might just reflect on what we saw in our own screen time earlier. A lot of time, we are spending a lot of time on our own phones, right? And then we tell our kids, get off your device. Don't do that. Don't do that. But we are doing it. So it's really hard to say to your kids, do as I say and not as I do, right? And we struggle with this, right? But we have to have patience and grace. The other thing I would say about the emotional regulation that I talked about before is that a lot of studies have shown that we cannot regulate ourselves because of the way media is designed now. So, an interesting study just came out that about 20 years ago, when we were watching maybe like Sesame Street or other kinds of kids programming, we would see characters on TV for about 12 seconds. And now on YouTube Shorts and other forms, we see characters for 1 to 2 seconds, which is really harming all of our attention spans, right? There's more and more research coming out about that all the time. And so it's really, really important to just be cognizant of how much time we're spending in this fast-paced dopamine hit kind of media space. And the reality is that whatever we decide for us and our family, we don't live in a bubble, right? we have to go interact with other people in the world. And I think the illustration on the right with the family sitting at dinner is very interesting because I think when most of us grew up, we were really influenced by our family. We might sit around and have dinner with them. We were influenced by our extended family, maybe by our church, maybe by a community group that we were in, the Rotary or whatever. And that those were our influences. And now you can see when people sit down at the table, they have all of these other voices in their heads, right? All of these people, online streamers, they have all of these different apps that they're looking at. And there's just so much more information that it's really hard to have the same kind of influence that families had over the way we think and live from about 30 years ago to today. So we really have to decide as a family, what do we value, right? Why do we want to use technology? For me, technology is really important in terms of my physical health. I love to listen to music when I run. I love it to track my steps, right? I love to connect with friends that I have all over the world. And I love to read the news, right? But you might have different values. So having a conversation around some of these things, and you might have a different value would want to discuss here. I think it's really a good grounding exercise to say, this is why we are introducing technology in our life, or this is why we use it, right? Not for mindless scrolling. And our families are not just, the people that we might, our brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. Our families can be really, really big. And in the summertime, we often go to other people's houses and stay for visits over extended periods of time. And all of a sudden, you might go to a different household, and your brother might not have the same rules and might let his kids do whatever they want online. So, really having these conversations about how concerned you are about that is an important thing to do, especially as we're approaching summer. And the other great thing to do is to find other families that might have some of your shared values, right? And then, you know, identify the families that might not have the same values, but understand why they might not have them and just be kind to them. Don't call them out. There's a lot of times I give talks at schools and a lot of people are finger pointing. Well, you let all the kids be on a device for, 5 hours at a birthday party, and I would never do that, right? So we have to be kind to one another because not everybody has the same information and not everybody is coming at it from the same perspective. And again, every child is different and every family manages their children differently. So the key here is really to have a lot of conversations, right? And when we think about devices, like why are we letting kids on devices? My biggest piece of advice is to delay as long as possible, right? I didn't give my kids phones until they were in eighth grade, and they think they hate me for that. They also think that all of their friends were making fun of them for that. So they had some social isolation. For sure, but now they have phones and can connect with people. Um, so there's a lot of different reasons that you might delay or that you might give your kids a phone earlier, right? When I talk to parents in New York City, there's a lot of sixth graders who have phones because they're traveling through the city to go to school and they need it for safety, right? And you can decide what your red lines are. Like, I'm not giving my kids Snapchat. I'm not going to give my kids access to Discord or to Roblox, or you can decide that for your family. And then you can decide sort of what level of control you want to have. So you can have rules and contracts. I gave my kids their devices and I made them sign a 4-page contract, which I'm happy to share with you if any of you want a copy. Some parents decide that they want to control technology in their house at the router level. So if you have Cable Bahamas or Alive, you could decide to shut off your Wi-Fi router at night, and then there's no more access to technology except for anything that's downloaded or games that might happen through like a television or something. You could use the parental controls that are on these apps. There is the opportunity to buy surveillance subscriptions, so a third party that you load onto your device that manages what's happening with your kids, and you can see what they're doing, see what they're texting. It doesn't work for all apps, but it's sometimes a good start for kids, but they're expensive, right? And then there's also opportunities to just detox, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. The bottom line is that you have to serve as a coach and that you have to develop trust with your kids because you can't surveil your kids forever. And so it's good to have um, things tight when they're younger and slowly, as you watch them mature, loosen up what they have access to. So the important thing to remember is that even if you set parental controls, or even if you ban things, we can't have this attitude. This was this funny guy in the 90s used to sell this rotisserie chicken machine, and he would say, set it and forget it. That is not the way we can manage technology. There is no such thing as doing something once and then you can smooth sail. These kids are finding out how to circumvent any rules and bans all the time, right? There's thousands of Reddit channels that teach kids how to get out of their family sharing on Apple, how to go around Family Link on an Android device, right? How to go on websites that their parents don't let them go on. So you might think you've locked it up, but believe me, they're just getting in. So this is why I really, really encourage you to have lots of conversations with your family regularly, right? And we know that hope is not a strategy, right? We never give the keys to a car to our 14-year-old and say, go out and drive, right? We give them lessons when they reach a certain age. We make them go to driver's ed. They have to take a test. And then even when they get their license, most of the time they have limitations on it for the first couple of years. So we need to sort of treat our technology in the same way. I'm a huge Knicks fan, as you all know. They just won the championship, and we really have to be like Mike Brown here. We all have to be coaching all the time. There's times that we're going to yell, and there's times that we're going to bring our family together, right? To say, this is what our rules are. This is what I'm really concerned about. And there's times that we are going to like see our kids, see our players grow, right? So I'm going to talk about a couple of hot topics with tech that I think are really important as we lay this foundation. And that is this idea of friendship and how friends can be online and they should also be in real life, right? If you have kids who are spending a lot of time just talking to online friends and not spending time with them in person, that can be a little worrisome, right? We need our kids to be developing community around them. And we also have to have them understand what the definition of a friend is. So this is an important list to go through with your kids. I also want to talk a little bit about texting. I can't see everybody on the screen, but I can imagine that texting is a huge source of frustration and arguments. So texting is happening everywhere. It's not just on your messaging app on your phone. It's happening in games like Roblox and Minecraft, on Discord, Google Docs. There's these secret calculator apps that kids can download, and they look like they're essentially calculator vaults. And you think, oh, your kids are really interested in math. They're not. They're just using these vault apps to text one another. And then, of course, they can do it through Spotify or any kind of music, lots of different music apps, and so many more places. And places like Roblox and Minecraft, they have parental controls, but there's thousands of games on those platforms, and you simply cannot control everything that's happening on those platforms because you can't know where your kids are going in all of those apps all of the time. Some of the biggest problems that we're seeing on those apps, and this is why I think I'm happy to say this confidently, that Roblox is one of the apps that I hate the most because of all of the bad things that are happening. And we're seeing a lot of lawsuits come out in the United States against Roblox because there's so much inappropriate content. There's so much cyberbullying that happens. There's what we call grooming, which is when older people come into these kid chat rooms and try to entice them and then try to meet them in person. And then that can lead to sexual abuse. And then, of course, texting, when you get really into it, can cause problems with sleep and anxiety and depression, right? And so it's just really important to understand how impactful texting is. We might think that it's a simple thing, but for a lot of these kids, it is a huge connection to the rest of the world. And one of the important things to talk about with texting is tone. And again, not to belabor this New York Knicks thing, but this is a really good story to illustrate the point. So Elmo, right before the NBA finals started, said Elmo hopes that both teams have a lot of fun. And then literally all of New York City started cyberbullying Elmo. And this is just a couple of the examples that were out there, right? That Elmo's a coward, that, he's never allowed to go back to Sesame Street. You better choose a winner. You're from New York. You're one of us, right? And that's essentially cyberbullying. Elmo was just keeping the same tone that he has of being upbeat and wanting people to win and play together that he's been known for decades. But it really got mistaken by people online. So Cookie Monster came out and he tried to smooth things over and said, Elmo, teach me not to eat trophy. Me teach Elmo to pick a team. Go Knicks, right? And so that smoothed it out a little bit for Sesame Street, but you can see how it's really hard to understand people's tone, especially if you don't know where they're coming from. And I just really love this example to show to kids. And so then kids are getting caught in these group chats, right? They're either on their messaging devices or in gaming. And there's a lot of really positive things for group texting. But then, as I said before, there are lots of problems, right? A lot of kids are trying to manage conflict online, which is not a good situation. So, one of the things that I strongly suggest you do before your kids get into texting and group chats is to model what good chats look like, right? So put them in a chat with you and their siblings or some cousins or friends that they met somewhere, maybe, or friends that they have at church or they've met somewhere else. And really be part of that so they can see that you're not, that you might say, happy birthday, or can't wait to see you, when we go to the beach this weekend, instead of, I hated what you wore, you looked really bad, right? We don't do those kinds of things on texting. So that I think the modeling the behavior can really help eliminate some things in the future. And then just in general, there's some etiquette that you should discuss with your kids. And I think the number one thing here is do the mom test, right? Is what you're sending, if your mom saw that, would she be okay with it? So that's with words and pictures. If you're sending something inappropriate and your mom saw it and you'd be mortified, best not to send it, right? I also want to talk a little bit about screen time, which everybody has a concern about. And so one of the things that is really important to do is to put some boundaries on screens. And again, not all screen time is the same, but again, to promote in real life interaction and living, right? So these are some tips. And one of the things that I really liked, I saw some of the questions for younger kids and how to manage device time. I love this tip about one charge per weekend. And this shouldn't be for like these new devices that have 16 hours of battery, but maybe for a hand-me-down device that might have 4 or 5 hours of battery life, but you could also drain it when the kids are sleeping. So that's another tip. But give them one charge per weekend, right? So maybe you give it to them on a full battery on a Friday night. And then you say, well, it doesn't get charged again. So if they can't self-regulate and they've used all the battery for Saturday morning, that's their problem. These are growing pains. It becomes it's difficult. There'll be a lot of crying, a lot of tantrums. But once you get through it and and everybody understands the expectations, it can really, really help. Another thing I love for adults is this turning on the grayscale. Right? When your phone is gray and doesn't have all these pretty colors and all your pictures with all the bright blue water and the blue sky and it's sunny, it looks so unappealing and you won't use your phone as much. The other thing that I think is really good for adults if we're trying to model the behavior that we want our kids to see and to do is to narrate what you're doing. It's one thing if you pick up your phone and you say, oh, I'm calling your grandmother because I want to see what time we're meeting her tomorrow. Oh, now I'm just checking my bank account and now I'm reading the news. Oh, and now I'm scrolling on TikTok. When you say that, you sound really ridiculous. So narrating what you're doing also helps you control your own use of your device and also helps you model that behavior that you want to see. So I just want to play this video for you, just really to hone in why we should be thinking about device-free spaces.
Oh, it's so nice to all be sitting down together. You can tell me something they did today.
I drew a horsey.
Good for you, son.
I started smoking.
I love you too, sweetheart.
I'm selling bongs out of our minivan.
I got a tramp stamp.
I'm getting implants.
I'm dating your brother.
Uh-huh.
and cooking meth in the basement.
Great idea, kiddo. That's why you're so popular at school.
So it's a little extreme, but I think you get the point that it's if we are not paying attention to our kids, we're missing a lot, and then they see us behave that way, and then they could start doing the same thing. So I just wanted to come back to this idea I threw out before about detox, right? A lot of people say, oh, if your kid is off their screens for 30 days, they're going to be a new kid, right? Well, that's great. But we have to work, right? And we have other things happening, and sometimes there's a big family crisis and we just need our kids to be quiet and we put them on a device. And so this idea of 30 days is really daunting to people, but we don't have to do it in these huge chunks of time. We can try smaller approaches that actually are very impactful, especially if we spend time talking with one another. Like, how did that make you feel? One of the things that I've noticed a huge difference on is if I don't use my phone for the first 30 minutes of waking up, it changes my day, right? I also really like now putting my phone away when I'm in the line at the grocery store or if I'm on the train and I interact with other people, right? And a study was just done when people interact in the waiting room of a doctor's office, they actually have less fear of being at the doctor than if they were just staring at their phone, right? So I think that these are some really small things to try. And then, of course, I'm a huge proponent of taking massive social media breaks. So just deleting any kind of social media from your phone for a day, a week, or a month, or whatever you want to do, just to try it out and see how it makes you feel. Because often, all of us are impacted by what we see on social media in negative ways. Even if it's LinkedIn, right? It can be a real game changer if we just take a break from it. Oops, sorry. So some summertime screen rules that you might have, and we're going to send out worksheets for you that you could print out and stick up in your house. But here's an example of something that you could stick on your refrigerator. You can't have any screen time until you've done these things, or each thing on this list equals 20 minutes of screen time, because you don't want your kids spending the entire summer with their heads in a device. So you can be creative about this. And again, we'll send this as an example. And then there's something called summertime bingo, right? That are, these are not on screens. You could choose these activities, put these in the squares, and then when your kids get a bingo, you might, take them for an ice cream, or you might take them to the beach, or what other kind of treat you might have. Can be really enticing to the kids so that they're working towards something outside of their screen. So now I want to go through parental controls themselves on devices, but again, want to stress that you are your kid's best parental control. I said before, and I'll say it again, kids know how to get around everything the older they are, right? So there's a lot of free options out there, and using them is definitely good, but there's a lot of flaws. And let's remind ourselves that this technology was not developed for parents and definitely not developed for kids, right? So not hardly any of it is intuitive. It took me about 4 hours to set up the phones that I gave my kids when they first received them. And I'm still not satisfied with how they're set up because there's so many things that are lacking. One of the quickest things that we can do, though, is make sure that any device that's in our house, if your kids are using Google, is to literally Google Safe Search. And then this screen will come up, and then you filter out everything that has explicit images, text, and links. That means you are protecting your kids from seeing potentially pornography, which kids are seeing at about 10 years old on average now, from child sexualized abuse material, and from all sorts of other nefarious things that young children should not be seeing on the internet. So one of the things that we can also do is change our smartphones. I really should say our smart devices to dumb phones and dumb devices. So if you have an Apple phone, you can take away all the apps on the phone and just leave the ones that you want, right? A lot of people think the camera app is really dangerous for kids. But it can also be a really creative tool. Like kids could learn to be filmmakers, right? And also, some people don't like to leave a FaceTime app on their phone for their kids, but it's also a way that they can connect with their family who might live on another island, right? So that when you set up your phone just to have certain apps, that's called assistive access. And then on an Android device, you can have a minimalist home screen called O Launcher. And then the other thing, I'm sure your kids have played this trick on you where they're like, Mommy, give me your phone. I want to check the weather. And you pass the phone and they look at the weather app for less than 2 seconds. And then all of a sudden they're on YouTube, right? So you can do something on your Apple device called guided access, which when you give them the phone to check the weather, they cannot get out of that app unless you put in your passcode. So it's a really good way to help kids stay focused and to stop lying to you about what they're looking at. So right now we're going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to share my iPhone with you to show you some settings that and to show you some experiences that I think you should be really aware of before you give your kids devices, or if your kids have devices, so you clearly understand what your options are and what you can potentially set up. I could do this next piece of this talk for about 4 hours, so I'm just going to hit on the top things so that you can follow along and potentially use them in your own world. So I'm going to go here, and I just need somebody to make sure that. Can you see my phone? Yes, perfect. All right. So I've got to put my glasses on. I know everybody commented before that I have 15,000 unread emails, but that's okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to YouTube because a lot of people commented on what YouTube settings can they use because their kids are watching so much YouTube. So I'm going to try to put I have to do this in two ways. I have to be on my phone with my fingers, and then I have to use the cursor here. So if you want to follow along, you can do this by opening up your YouTube app, but I just want to walk you through it. So you go to the U icon, which is if you've logged into YouTube, which I really strongly suggest you do, you click on your account down at the bottom. And then you go up to the top and you click on the gear icon that takes you to settings. All right. And then I want the first thing that you can do is go to your family center. And this should show you, these are my kids, and I have some controls for them because they have their own Gmails. And so you can do that with your own kids, is set up what you want them to see and not to see. Sorry, I have to go back here. So then I would suggest you visit time management, right? And I think one of the things that YouTube is trying to do to help us out, even though it's not that great, is to remind us to take a break. So if you toggle this on, remind to take a break, you can set a break reminder. And so I feel like I shouldn't be on YouTube for more than 30 minutes. So I'm setting that for 30 minutes, right? And then I can have YouTube remind me when it's bedtime, right? So I'm saying, I don't know why it's 3 a.m. I'm going to toggle that off for a minute, and I can reset that to different times you can see right here, right? So, oops, I have to do it on my phone. You can set that up. And then this is the thing that I think all parents are losing their minds about is the short feeds. So if I toggle short feeds on, it comes up. So this is YouTube Shorts. These are the 30-second videos that kids are watching incessantly. And within an hour, kids can watch over 400 YouTube Shorts, right? It's crazy. So putting a limit on their phone and on your phone, just in case they ever take your phone, of maybe 15 minutes is a good policy to start off with. I'm going to take you back to playback down here. And on playback, you can check, do you want to autoplay the next video? I have that toggled off because I don't think autoplay is good for kids because it keeps them watching and watching and watching, right? And then the rest of these are just like picture-in-picture stuff that don't really matter. So those are the big things I think are really important. Also under general, sorry. You can have restricted mode. This is the other big thing, is if I don't want my kids to be seeing inappropriate content, you would toggle restricted mode on. And then hopefully YouTube will be an aid in filtering out some of the more mature some of the more mature things. So that is YouTube. Now I'm going to take you, I don't know how many of you on here have ever fooled around with Snapchat, but this is where a lot of kids are right now. And Snapchat is a very scary platform. I have a fake profile. I'm not on Snapchat. And I have a fake profile of a 14-year-old girl. And I just want you to see what girls can see. It's not just a messaging platform. It's literally a platform where they can just see really gross stuff. And because I'm in there as a 14-year-old girl, it's showing me a ton of beauty stuff and just really gross things that I can click on and watch. And even if you have family controls on Snapchat, it doesn't prevent you from seeing all this. And I haven't added in any of my contacts, but if I did, it would then show me information related to my contacts. The next thing I want to show you is something on Instagram, which is overwhelming. I do not recommend. I do not recommend Instagram for kids until they're at least 16. But if you are on Instagram and you're using it, one of the things that you can do is go up to the cursive writing up here, and you have to do this every time that you go into Instagram, is check who you're following or your favorites, and then you won't see. And look, there's EEO, right? Right there. There's what we're doing. These are some of my favorite people that I follow. Then you won't see all the algorithmic garbage that is fed to you all the time and pushing you to buy products, right? So these are only the people that I follow. And there's a whole lot of New York Knicks stuff because this is the big news right now,
That's amazing.
right?
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, so favorites is
Everyone wants
different
to know
than
that.
yeah, so favorites is different than following. If I went to following, it's still all of the people I follow, which is of course still going to be the New York Knicks. But these are all there's Jen's artwork. These are all the people I follow. I probably follow hundreds of people that I just checked, but I never see them, right? But if you want to see your family only, make sure those are your favorites. Then you won't see all this garbage all the time, right? Okay, I'm going to show you one more thing, which is about notifications. So I'm going to go into notifications into my app, and I just want to show you how I have turned off almost all of my notifications on my phone. That's preventing the more than 400 notifications that tend to be sent on our phones every single day, right? We don't really need to know if Dunkin' Donuts has a new drink. We don't need to know if Burger King has a special, right? We can turn these notifications off to help us focus, and they definitely should be turned off on our kids' phones, right? So toggling off, unfortunately, they don't make it easy for you. You have to individually go through all of your apps, and I have a ton of apps and I'm embarrassed by it, but you have to go through and turn off all of those notifications so that then you're not bothered when you're trying to have time to be with your family. So I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'm going to just go back to the slides just in case we want to cover anything else. But I'm happy if people want to come off of mute if they want to ask questions. Oh, that's not the right one. We can do that.
This was so good, Karla.
Let me know what else you guys want to know. Anybody have any questions? I'm happy to stay on longer. I'm also happy to, my email will be in here. I'm happy to answer questions on email. Does anybody have any questions? Don't be embarrassed. This is the hardest job in the world, is to raise kids in the digital age.
And I think what you said in the very, very beginning about the kids' response and saying, oh, everyone else does it, and you're going to make me not be able to make friends. Just being self-aware. It's so being aware of their responses. Yeah, can you put your email in the
Yep, I
chat?
just put my email there, and I'll send out the slide deck so that you can click on things too. I will say I'll just wrap it up if nobody wants. I know that sometimes it's really hard to ask questions in a group setting because You might be embarrassed by oh, I gave my kid a phone when they were 7 years old, and you might want to walk it back. I think you should all know that we need to, as I said before, we should be graceful about all of this, right? This is hard. There's zero playbook, and nobody is on our side. The tech companies, the governments, maybe our friends, don't believe the same things that we do. So it can feel really, really lonely, but don't be embarrassed and just know that it's okay to start over. If you gave your kid a phone already, you can dial it back and say, you know what, we're not using phones on the weekends, or we're not going to use phones after 6 p.m. in our house, or this is now, I've just learned new information. And that is a great line to say to your kids. I've just learned new information, because that is always true. Tech companies are being sued every day, and new information is coming out about how bad they are literally every day. So when you say, "Oh, I've just learned new information," you're not lying, right? And your kids you can share, the older they are, about how you're learning about this information and what is out there in the world and impacting kids. And the other big thing is, like, if your kids are older, explain to them there are countries completely banning social media, right? England, Australia, there's some Scandinavian countries. Like, we know the research is out there that say these things are bad for our kids, and we need to really have a good, healthy tech diet, because again, there are some very positive things. But we need to make sure that we understand it all first. What else? I'm just going to show
Yeah,
these
there was a
last.
question that says, do you
Yep.
recommend an account for a young child who likes to watch YouTube, or should be logged in on our own? So what would you recommend?
Yeah. So for YouTube, I would say, first of all, I would create an account for kids when they're young, because if you are just letting them use your device, if you have YouTube on your device, they are seeing the YouTube that you can see. And I'm not saying that you're looking at pornography, but you have an easier way to get to pornography than if you had your kid's profile set up on Google. And you can do that on Google Family Link, or if you can do it on an iPhone, if you give them an account that shows their age. The other trick is, if you have older kids and you want to set up a profile because you've never done that, set up a profile for them as a younger kid. So they might be 12, but you can set it up for them as 8, right? And that's sneaky, but it will really help you lock down some things. But again, things get through all the time, but that is definitely something that is helpful. And then there's also YouTube Kids, right? And they have good controls, but things still get through. I was explaining before, there's something called, a couple years ago, Elsa Gate, where even in YouTube Kids, they were these videos got through of Elsa from Frozen, and then about 30 seconds to a minute in these videos, it turned into pornography and really inappropriate stuff. So, but they got posted on YouTube Kids because it was supposedly about Elsa. So just know that there's nothing out there that's fail safe, right? I'm just going to flip to this last slide.
Another,
Um,
oh, Carla, well, another question someone
yeah.
asked in the chat was, how long should a 10 to 12-year-old be able to be on a device? What would
Yeah,
be a
so again, there's no hard and fast rule about how long kids should be on a device, right? There's the only rules that exist out there that are time-based are for kids who are under 3 years old, which is less than an hour a day, right? Sorry, no time at all a day, because we don't want kids to have the reliance on screens for behavior regulation and that sort of stuff. And then after that, it really is about to get to know your kid. But I would say, people hate that answer, right? I'm just trying to give you what sort of the psychologists say. But I would say, from my own perspective as a parent, like, I want to make sure that my kids are balancing their screen time with all sorts of other in real life activity. So it might be that you have a maximum of 2 hours, right? And it can't be unguided time online. It should be maybe an hour of an educational program, and then maybe an hour to play a game that they might be playing. I just want to say one thing about gaming. I am not anti-gaming. I hate Roblox. I think it's a cesspool. And I'm not a big fan of Minecraft. I know that's where a lot of kids were. And believe me, my kids were there, but I also was in a room with them in a Roblox game and saw strangers come in to try to get their attention. So I've had that experience. I do think that playing games with other kids, like soccer, or they have the Madden NFL games, or they have some kids like to play NBA. Like those are ways that boys especially like to connect. And I think that it's really fun for them to play, especially if they have friends in other places, other islands, where they can't be with each other. But I also think that gaming is really fun when you're sitting shoulder to shoulder on the same couch and you're talking to one another. But I would say for a 10-year-old, you want to push them to do as many in real life activities as possible, and maybe limit screen time to about 2 hours. I can stop sharing. Somebody said even in the summer. Summers are tough, right? We don't have a lot of things to do with our kids. I think if you can, find like one of the things I've been making my kids who are older now is I've been making them watch old TV shows that I used to watch, right? So they're watching The Jetsons, which is a crazy um, cartoon. I can't even believe it was on TV. There's so many like bad things that were in that cartoon, but I make them watch Bewitched and other the Waltons and really just funny shows that were on when we were little. Those I know are not really going to harm them. They're going to learn some terrible stereotypes probably, but you can mix it up between like media and movies. The organization that I used to work for, Common Sense Media, has amazing lists of things for kids at different ages. Here are the books that they should read, by the age of 12. Here are the movies that they should watch. And so having your kids spend time with long form content over the summer should be one of your goals, because when you spend time with long form content, you are developing more appreciation and understanding of what a storyline is, right? Watching an hour and a half movie as opposed to a 30-second YouTube short teaches you way, way more about empathy and kindness and all these other things.
I want to just suggest maybe we can do a part two on.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of teachers and as parents, like I know I use YouTube to do read out louds with the kids because I can't always find the books on the island. But then I also find that when I'm on YouTube, I'll get these weird commercials that are not appropriate for kids while we're doing the read out loud. So I don't know if there's a way to, how do you not watch those?
Yep.
Is there a way to
Yep.
block them so I can just watch what I want to watch? And I think that would be so helpful for so many parents and teachers, because I know some teachers use that as a resource in the classroom.
Yeah, so there are new things that teachers are using to that's sort of a filter for YouTube. So you can only see the educational content, which is great. And I can find that information and send it to you. And then unfortunately on YouTube, when you're watching with your kid, to not see the advertisements that might be inappropriate, right? You have to buy a premium service, which is terrible, right? The more you want to protect your kid, the more you have to pay, which is something that is hard for us to understand because these are all free services. So we're like, oh, if it's free, it's amazing. But we're the product. Again, I'm going to reinforce that we're the product and we are making these companies rich, right? And I'll just quickly explain that so everybody understands. Every time we use an app or device or anything, every time the device counts how many times we look up or pick up our phone or enter into a different app on our phone, it's recording data, right? If you haven't seen the Social Dilemma movie on Netflix, it's really good to watch, especially with teenagers. And we can send around something about movies for teenagers to watch, how they're being manipulated. But all of these are data points. So what's happening is that all of these data points are gathered and then they're pushing certain information to us. Oh, you should buy all this kind of makeup. Oh, you should wear all these kinds of clothes. Oh, you should think about all of this politically, right? And this is why people are saying we're so fractured across the world right now into like boxes of thinking the same way. So there's not as much creativity and learning and that sort of thing happening. So it's really important to understand that the more protection you want, the higher cost you're going to have to pay, both like as a person, but also in your wallet, you'll have to pay for YouTube Premium. Anything else? We can definitely do part two. I'm happy to do it. You should send these guys your questions. I'm super passionate about this. And I just want our kids to be okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Lang. Are you there?
I think she had to drop.
Okay.
But thank you all.
much. This is awesome, Karla. Thank you so much. So helpful.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys hopefully on part 2. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody,
Happy
for
end of school
attending.
year.
Good night, everyone. Thank you to
Good night,
everyone who joined
everybody.
us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello.